Briahna, what's on your radar?
Well, Robbie, as we all know, long before Elon Musk, Twitter had a problem. Its content moderation policies were inconsistently applied. Users found themselves banned for political statements, while harassment that seemed to violate the company's own rules often went unnoticed. And bot swarms paid for, backed by establishment camps supporting people like Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, made the experience miserable for many people on the left and right. Most glaringly, however, the platform's choice to block the Hunter Biden laptop story made it clear that politics, as much as principle, were guiding the decisions made at Twitter HQ. That mistake joined a list of other grievances relating to free speech concerns. Was the American left indifferent to Assange's persecution because he was perceived as being anti-Hillary? Was the liberal media putting the thumb on the scale against Trump in 2016? Were statements about COVID that turned out to be false only deemed misinformation when they came out of the mouths of conservatives or independents? So when Elon Musk, who positioned himself as a free thinker and First Amendment advocate, announced his plan to purchase Twitter, many people who were concerned about censorship were excited to see what he might do to improve the app. Though I had my doubts, I hoped for the best. Certainly something needed to change. Regretfully, at this time, Musk seems not to have addressed the problem at the core of Twitter's speech policies, its inconsistency. While some folks have celebrated that Donald Trump, Kanye West, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Jordan Peterson have been let back onto the app, over the weekend, a number of independent journalists were banned from the app with little to no notice from liberals or conservative free speech advocates. Musk's decision not to reinstate Alex Jones was, by his own admission, based on the fact that Musk had tragically lost a child himself and therefore found Jones's Sandy Hook trutherism to be beyond the pale. Is that a reliable standard for content moderation? What offends Musk? He lost a child, so Jones can't come back. But, well, if Musk were trans, would Pearson be out? If he were Jewish, would Ye still be off the app? When not relying on his own personal feelings, Musk has repeatedly turned to Twitter's poll feature to get the public to weigh in on his leadership decisions. For example, when reinstating Trump. And while Twitter polls certainly have a certain democratic appeal, they don't do much to resolve one of the core problems with the platform. Before Musk, users had very little certainty about what they could and could not do on the app. Violent threats were technically prohibited against trans people, but community members regularly complained that that rule wasn't enforced. Meanwhile, it seemed acceptable to wish death on people of Russian heritage, for instance, because war, I guess. COVID misinformation was scrutinized closely, but hate speech policy was inconsistently enforced. Whatever you think about what the rules should be, what should have been in place, it was next to impossible to know what would be enforced, at least until it was too late. And Musk's choice to make case-by-case decisions based on Twitter polls and his personal experiences does little to resolve those inconsistencies. Even if you agree with how Musk has handled these particular instances, is the goal here to create fair, equitable, consistent policies to support free speech? Or is it to advance one's own political agenda at any cost? To pick a benevolent ideologue you happen to agree with this time? How is that any better than the status quo that came before? As I explained in a radar months ago when Musk was first hinting that he might buy Twitter, there have always been indications that Musk might not be the most consistent vanguard of genuinely important free speech interests. For example, the National Labor Relations Board fined Musk for a tweet in which he unlawfully threatened employees with loss of stock options if they chose to unionize. And now, as advertisers are exercising their First Amendment rights to spend money and contract where they please, withdrawing ad dollars from Twitter, Musk is characterizing that decision as a violation of his free speech, as though people spending money on his companies is a constitutionally enshrined entitlement. Now, that's obviously wrong. To be clear, I do think that some of the corporate practices used to punish people like Musk and Ye West for making various controversial or bigoted comments are overly punitive and too coercive, even if I disagree with those men's politics. JP Morgan suspending Ye West's bank accounts implicates a much more fundamental right than simply losing an Adidas contract. Banking services seem worryingly close to a common carrier service or utilities, basic essential infrastructure without which life becomes quite difficult. And I worry about the coercive effect of taking away people's ability to access those types of basic services. But Ye can't force Adidas to want to work with him without infringing on their freedom of association. Nor can Musk demand Apple's Tim Cook continue in his role as Twitter's biggest source of advertising money. This seems obvious, and yet the genuinely fundamental and sacred issue of free speech is being attached to these causes that basically amount to dudes doing bad at capitalism. Importantly, we're missing the forest for the trees. A video journalist who reports on far-right protests has been suspended from Twitter, as have several anti-fascist researchers and activists. Even worse, there's evidence that Musk is directing these decisions, not based on popular polls, but at the behest of his personal blue-check acquaintances. 4 accounts that have been suspended were singled out by far-right writer Andy Ngo in a public Twitter exchange with Musk. Musk told Ngo to, quote, report Antifa accounts that he thought should be suspended directly to him. And before you write these people off as some cringe libs who probably deserve to be booted off the app, note that one of the blocked accounts was a critic of Twitter's Hunter Biden laptop story ban before the 2020 election, someone who probably hoped Musk would really improve things, not target him. Another is a member of a gun club named for abolitionist John Brown. The club spent its time exercising its Second Amendment rights to protect LGBTQIA events from armed far-right protesters. Is banning these people really making America more free? The problem of conservative elites weaponizing legitimate concerns about free speech extends well beyond Twitter. As I've talked about on one of these radars, Alabama is making it illegal to support the boycott, divest, and sanction movement in support of Palestinian rights if you want a government contract. Parents of trans kids are being directed on how to parent their children by the state. There have been book bans in 32 states. Julian Assange wastes away in prison. Mega media corporations have decimated local stations, resulting in an immediate drop in content. And right now, Joe Biden is using the power of the state to crush a labor action where the demand is merely some paid vacation days. Railroad workers are trying to exercise their right to collectively bargain and potentially strike, a type of activity which conservative courts have already held to be political speech and thus protected. Left free speech advocates like Glenn Greenwald have consistently called this kind of activity out. Imagine how powerful it would be if there were as much energy to defend these rail workers as there is to reinstate podcasters after a Twitter ban. Now, I'm not saying that the Twitter bans don't matter. Podcasters' lives matter, but the lack of consistency here is worrying. There are so many speech issues we should be focused on, including really and truly improving Twitter. But so many of them are being subsumed into spat about the mundane. It's worth asking yourselves if the free speech advocates who take up so much of the oxygen are actually fighting to protect the marginalized or merely weaponizing a real issue to boost their own elite interests. So yeah, Robbie, the particular exchange between Andy Ngo and Elon Musk, where Ngo seemed to be saying, hey, I don't like these accounts, I don't like these Antifa people, they shouldn't be here. And then consequently, they were banned from the app. At the same time, there was all of this noise about celebrating people getting back onto the app. It seemed to be a distraction from all the people who are continuing to be railroaded off. And I'm not even critiquing really the choice right now to bring people back on, but are we missing the forest for the trees here?
Yeah, look, we're definitely going to need to move away from moderation by random Elon Musk fiat declaration. Like, that's not, I don't understand how that's sustainable for him.
Right.
It sounds like this is absorbing all of his attention and energy. I mean, he's tweeting constantly. He's responding to people constantly.
Yeah.
Like, this is a busy man. He's trying to launch a colony on Mars. Like, he has more important things to do than to bring back Jordan Peterson, who, whatever, maybe he shouldn't have been banned in the first place. I don't know. Certainly you can argue. See, this is the problem with content moderation. The rules are always going to be vague enough. People will always be dissatisfied because there will always be examples. And also some of it is done by, often things are flagged and then moderation is taken. So many times you can say, well, why was this taken down when this wasn't taken down, even though this violates the rules much more clearly than this does? Be like, well, nobody complained about that.
Right.
Nobody reported that.
Right.
Nobody saw that.
And the issue is with Elon being so online, if having a blue check and being followed by Elon and having access to Elon's DMs mean the people that you flag get kicked off the app, basically he's deputizing all of these tyrannical knights to be running around Twitter doing doing things that happen to align with his own personal politics, which should not be the point of Twitter and wasn't the point of him intervening to try to protect the free speech interests of the people on the app.
Of course, I'm sure conservatives would point out, this was the case before Elon took over.
There was a problem too.
Right, there was the Trust and Safety Board of people just constantly snitch tagging by mainstream media or progressive media figures saying, why has, excuse me, support safety. Why hasn't somebody taken an issue against someone using a dead name or someone saying something offensive? And then, oh, sorry, we'll get right on that. We don't want to, risk the wrath of the media. So then they would take it. Like that was the reality. Now it's the shoes on the other foot, and I think people are finding out why that was not so great.
Right, but once we get past the "haha, told you so" stage of this, like I personally didn't benefit under either regime.
No, well, neither did I.
So
neither did I.
The point of the matter, it shouldn't be everyone just being okay with something because they do or do not personally benefit. If you make consistent rules, there are going to be times when you feel like those rules don't serve you. But someone said once, it's a good negotiation if everybody feels screwed at the end. Mm-hmm. And I think we've gone from a regime where a lot of people felt like the Twitter leadership was on their side and advancing a more liberal agenda, and now people feel like it's on their side and advancing a more conservative agenda. And they just need to figure out a content-neutral policy and figure out also how to apply it consistently. And people on both sides are going to have to get comfortable with the idea that some of the outcomes are not to their taste.
Funny enough, I don't think the result of bringing back these very kind of extreme or provocative right-wing figures does serve Elon Musk's ultimate goal of apparently electing Republicans. He said he wants to elect Republicans, but the more you remind sort of the people in the middle, the people whose votes are up for grabs, of the crazy elements of the right, the more they run screaming back to Democrats, is what we've learned.
Well, it's also not helping his bottom line with Apple being his biggest advertiser.
I think we're going to talk about that a little bit in another segment in the show. We'll have more Rising right after this.